Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop, and this will be session 2 of carving a Drake Ruddy in winter plumage. And in session 1, we got all the components cut out, so now we're ready to start grinding today and shaping the bird. We'll focus on the head today, so I'll bring the camera in. We'll talk. I've got a study bill. It happens to be a hen Ruddy, but the shapes are very similar between the hen and the Drake, so we can look at the hen and learn from that and then size it up a bit for the Drake's bill. This is going to be a hunting decoy as a reminder, so a relatively simple carving, simple paint job, functional, strong, and I really enjoy these gunning birds. So let's get going. If you're enjoying my channel, please hit the subscribe button. That does help me out. It's free, and I'll keep it that way. Thanks. Okay, let's take a quick look at the hen Ruddy study bill. Some very unique characteristics: short, stubby bill, very rounded on the end, pretty wide. There's a characteristic ridge that goes from up here down under the nostril, and that's pretty prevalent. The nostrils themselves, pretty long enclosure and a small nostril towards the front of the enclosure. A lot of wrinkles on this bill. I'm not going to be putting wrinkles on this bird. It's a gunning decoy, so I'm going to keep it very simple. You can definitely see a ridge out here, so I'm going to carve in a little bit of a ridge there. There's also a ridge right here in the side light. Hopefully you can see that. It runs this very small nail, very unique, even concaved a bit at the tip as opposed to pointing outward. And then this ridge, this central ridge that runs right down the middle of the bill and turns into somewhat of a groove up here. And from the top, you can see this kind of angular look here. Not much lower mandible showing. Okay, I've done some layout work, and I had a male Ruddy bill pattern, and I've put that on here. I've laid the bird out. The cuts I need to make, including the neck down below. It's pretty broad, stocky neck on the bird, so we want to convey that in this carving. So I'm going to use the coping saw and cut out the profile, get some wood out of the way, and then we can start carving. Use my coping saw. And as usual, I have the bill pattern above and below so that I can make sure I'm making a nice square cut. Since this is a hand saw, and just checking as I go to make sure I stay square. I'm going to take it down to this guideline and then cut into the bill and get this piece out of the way. I'm going to slow down and be careful so I don't cut into the side of the bill here. Now I can make this angle cut. Checking underneath, make sure I'm not cutting off the neck. Looks good. I'm shooting for this guideline as my exit for the coping saw, roughly. just past the eye back here. Okay, do the same thing over here and come back. All right, he's already looking more like a Ruddy. Now I'm going to use the bandsaw just to clip off these back pieces since I have a nice stable flat surface for the bandsaw. I stopped the video there because I think it's an important safety aspect. You get a piece of scrap that's pulled down into the opening and stuck there. I turn the saw off. I don't want to be messing around with my hands that close to the blade, especially with a large piece of wood there that, God forbid, something gets snagged and pulls me into the blade. So turn the blade off, get the scrap out of the way, and go at it again. Okay, now I want to locate the notch on the carving. And this is a pretty shallow notch. And this comes up quite high into the head, up past the eye. Now this is a hen bill, and I don't have a Drake study bill. So I'm just measuring with my dividers on the hen from that cheek out to the tip of the bill. And that dimension is the same as from the tip of the notch here down to the tip of the bill. So I'm going to use that guideline to locate my notch on the Drake. You can see the bill is just a little bit larger on the Drake. I'm going to use that same side dimension to locate the tip of the notch here on the Drake's bill. And on the hen, it's about a 1/2 inch between the tips up here. It's going to be very close to the same on the Drake. So I'm going to use just a little over that 1/2 inch guideline. And the notch shape is very, very much a V. Nothing unusual going on there. Okay, we'll get that ground in and located. That dimension to me is really critical because it sets the appearance of the length of the bill. You get that way too far down here, it's going to look awkward, or way too far back, the bill is going to look too long, and you lose the characteristic Ruddy look. So it looks like that is going to go back to about here. I'm just going to pencil that in so I can keep it in mind. The crown is 1.5 inches, so I need 3/4 of an inch on each side of the center line. And then that will feed right into the notch up front and then go towards the center line in back. And I've kind of repenciled in the cheeks here after making these cuts, and eventually we'll take wood out on both sides here above the cheek and take it down to the crown width. All right, let's grind. I'm going to start with this 1/8 inch diameter ruby bit and define the notch here. And I'm running this at 2 times speed just to get through it a little quicker. So I'm lowering each side and leaving that center notch raised. And we don't have to take it down very far. Now I'm going to use my pencil and just take a look at symmetry. Now that the notch is defined, I'm going to switch to a 3/4 inch saber tooth burr, and I am running this at normal speed. Just a note here, this head is not very large. There's not a lot to hang on to. You may want to add a handle. I'm just going to go at this very slowly and make sure I keep my hands away from the burr. And that takes a firm grip, especially going against the grain. Every once in a while you get a chatter with the burr, so just, again, be safe. I'm also using this to rough round the bill a bit. Begin to shape that up. Now I'm going to define the cheek back here. And again, I'm carving very slowly, just so I don't push the burr too hard, especially against the grain. Defining the back of the cheek there and narrowing the back of the head. So I'm hitting that line pretty close now. Just a little cleanup work. And I'm tying that right into the notch in front. Now I want to work on the neck area here. So again, very carefully undercutting this area. And just a note, anytime you're using a burr around an edge of any sort, like the edge of the neck down there, you've got to be careful you don't catch on that edge. Just another reason to go slow. Take your time. So I'm formed the front there, and now I can come around the back, form the back shape of the neck as it ties into the back of the head here. A lot of people will use a glove, a leather glove on the left hand if you're right-handed, just to protect from an errant slip of the burr. So you might want to consider that. Now I'm rounding that cheek area. Also down below here to kind of get that nice hourglass shape from the front. So just working to get a nice rounded shape to the cheek. I'll do that same thing on the opposite side and then come back. Now I'm going to use my 1/2-inch sanding drum and just go over everything and take out the burr marks and kind of finish the sculpting. This is 150 grit Swiss sandpaper or sand fabric. So I'll just show a portion of this. Just know that I'm going to go over the entire head like this, finish shaping, and get everything rough sanded. This is a real time saver, so you don't have to hand sand everything. This 1/2-inch drum is a great tool for this purpose. All right, now I want to define the upper or the details of the bill as it meets the face here. So I'm going to go back to my 1/8-inch ruby bit that has grit on the end of it as well, and I'm using the edge of this cylinder to just kind of cut in and define the shape of the bill as it meets the face, and then using the side of that bit to clean up material, smooth things out. And then round the cheek back into the bill. So I'm just working on this upper portion. I want to make sure I'm going to pencil it in here and take a look at symmetry from the front and make sure both sides look the same. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to get a measurement from the tip of the bill to where the upper and lower mandible meet in the corner there. And I want to mark that on my carving, both sides, so I know how far back that has to come. And to help position that corner, I'm going to get a measurement from the chin down there vertically and see how far up it comes and put a mark on the carving there. So I have that corner positioned correctly now. I can pencil it in. I'm going to take material out here. On both sides. I'll go back to my 1/8-inch ruby, and I'm going to speed the video up for this ruby bit work. Okay, I'm at 2 times speed, and now I want to take this material out. In the corners on both sides. And I'm basically taking the width of the bill and continuing that back into the chin area there. Now I'll get another measurement with my dividers to that point where the upper and lower mandible meet and give myself a mark in the corner to see if I've taken out enough wood to get where I need to be here. It looks like I need to take a little more out on this side. So I'm just going to use the end of this 1/8-inch ruby bit. Take that back just a little bit more. That should be enough. And now I'm going to go to this cone-shaped ruby bit. And we don't want these shelves here, so I'm going to smooth that material back out into the face and round that area. So we have nice soft curves, and then I can clean up some of that grinding work we did with the side of this bit. Same thing on this side. Just blending that back out. And I can use the tip of this bit to really get down in the corner there and clean things up. There's a little bit of a curved shape to the lower edge of that upper mandible, so I want to portray that accurately. So I'm going to pencil that in. Just going to take another quick reference check here and make sure I'm hitting the right spot. Little upturn in the corner there. Now I'm going to take my knife and very carefully score along that line. And you really need to use a light touch here, because if I press too hard right there, I'm going to rip that lower mandible way too deep. So you can see I'm just kind of rocking my blade back and forth so I don't go too deep. I need about 1/16 of an inch of depth. Now I'm digging down in this direction, or cutting down. Digging is not a good term in carving. And then I'm scoring from the bottom up. You have to be very careful, very sharp knife. I'm angling down. I want to remove this little piece of wood to define the separation line between the upper and lower mandible, like that. I'll do the same thing on this side. Now we've got some cleanup work to do. You can see from that knife work, there's a little bit of rough edges right up here at the face. So I'm going to use the tip of this ruby cone-shaped bit and just clean that up. And I can also kind of clean up any tooling marks that are down there from the bandsaw or the coping saw blade. Same thing on this side, just cleaning that up in the corner. I'm just using the tip of the bit to go in there and make sure I've got all of the knife marks out. Now I want to cut this lower mandible back into the chin a little bit. And I'm going to use my knife carefully and go take this sliver of wood out on both sides, and that'll give us a little bit of definition and narrow up that lower mandible a bit as it meets the face. And it also creates this V shape underneath the lower mandible where the chin meets the bill. I'm calling it a chin. I don't know if that's accurate, but you can see that little V shape down there. And now I'll clean that up. There, I'll pencil it in so you can see it a little better. Now I'll use that cone-shaped ruby bit again to clean everything up. You can see the bandsaw marks on the lower mandible there. I want to clean all of those off. All right, we have the rough shaping pretty much done on the bill as it meets the face there and the separation of the upper and lower mandible. Just going to pencil some things in so I can get a better look at symmetry again. And that looks pretty good. Now I want to set the eyes to the proper width, and I've got a reference dimension from a Pat Godden pattern book that tells me how wide the eyes need to be set. And I've got that in my calipers. I'm going to use this cone-shaped bit to go in and cut a trench through the eye. Trench sounds too severe. I'm cutting a groove in there. We don't have to set these very deep. And once I get the groove in there, then I'm rounding up and down so that we have nice soft lines. I could tell from my caliper set and the reference dimension that I didn't have to go too deep here to hit the proper width for the eye set. I've mentioned this before, but this is an area that I see as a judge, having judged in contests. A lot of newer carvers tend to not get this dimension right, and it sticks out like a sore thumb if the eyes are way too wide set or way too narrow. It's obvious pretty quickly. That's pretty close to where I want to be. I'll just do some final cleanup. And then we should be good to go on the eye width. I'll do some hand sanding of this area as well. And that eye channel goes right up to the bill, so the bird has line of sight down its bill when it's pursuing food. All right, that eye set is good. Now I'm going to use my 1/2-inch sanding drum and just kind of finish the job here, smoothing everything out and taking out any tooling marks that are left. Taking that groove right into the cheek so that there's a nice transition there. We keep everything soft. All right, I'll finish that up. You can see that kind of hourglass shape from the front. And now that we have the eyes set correctly, I'm going to use a 3/4 inch saber tooth burr to go ahead and round the crown. And the profile from the front, the crown is pretty well rounded, so I don't want to leave kind of a square Frankenstein look from the front. We want a nice round blend up to the center line. I always mention this, but I always think it's worth mentioning. I try to keep my center lines intact because that is the master pattern for the profile of the bird. So if I cut into that center line, I've modified my pattern and modified the profile that I work so hard to create. So the center line stays on until I finish sand everything. And there are times like right now, I've got to take the bandsaw marks out, but I'll pencil the center line back on so I keep it in front of me. Now I'll do some finish sanding with the 1/2-inch drum and get all the tooling marks out. Make sure I have a nice round profile from the front. And this will save a lot of time, again, in hand sanding. I always finish with hand sanding because you just can't get everything with a drum like this, but you can get a long ways. You can get 90% of the way there. All right, just know that I'm going to go over the entire head and smooth things out, but I won't make you watch that. I'll just finish up with some hand sanding. There's just a quick look at the roughed out head. Give you some views of that. All right, I think that's a good place to stop session 2. We've got the head rough shaped. In the next session, we'll add a few details to the head. Since it's a gunning bird, I'm not going to put too much detail in the bill. We want to keep it nice and sturdy. We'll get the eyes installed, probably begin to shape up the body as well in the next session. So until then, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you.